I just feel like home birth is something that I think that well, I won't say any, but honestly, any woman could do and feel empowered by. And I wish more women believed it was an option for them. Because I think most women are like, oh, I could never do that because X, Y, and Z. It's usually pain related. But I just wish that they knew that they could because it's so transformative and like it's just so much better. And women
Mhm.
deserve that. They deserve the best, and their babies deserve the best. And I truly believe that that's home birth for the majority of cases. There are obvious emergencies that require medical intervention, but I don't think we need to talk about exceptions all the time. I think that
Mhm.
the most women would be able to have a home birth and love it and
Mhm.
wish that all of their births had been that way.
Hey, you're listening to Empowered Births at Home with me, Esmeralda, the home birth doula, as your host. I am a mama of three, fellow home birther, and entrepreneur. I am completely obsessed with birth, more specifically, home birth. And this is a podcast where women share their empowering home birth stories, along with the journey that led them down the path to home birth. Whether you're currently pregnant, planning a home birth with your first or fourth baby, or even just someone who is a complete birth nerd like me, this is the podcast for you. So let's get into this week's empowering home birth story. We are on episode 33. Today we'll be chatting with Shandy, who is a mom of three and a doula slash birth keeper. She has had an interesting journey of her birth experiences, from having a birth in the hospital with almost every intervention you can think of, to having her last baby at home as a free birth. So we're going to hear all about her experiences with that. Let's go ahead and bring Shandy on.
Hi, I'm Shandy. I'm originally from California. My family now lives in Texas. I have three kids whom I homeschool, and that's pretty much us. We just homeschool, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, what kind of got you into thinking about having a home birth?
So I guess it starts with my first birth, which was a medicated hospital birth. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about birth. I didn't know anything about babies, motherhood, which is funny because I babysat a lot growing up from the time I was 12 years old until I got married. I babysat and
Mm,
nannied. And so I knew a lot about kids, but the birth and like newborn part was not common knowledge to me. So, and
yeah.
I didn't have anyone who really shared with me like birth experiences other than my mom, who was very vague about things. And all I knew about birth was that it was painful. And so I was like, well, I'm going to have an epidural, of course. And so that's what I did. And I actually had an elective induction, long story short, because I wanted my mom there and she had to go out of town soon. And so I needed to have my baby like now,
Mm,
or she wasn't going to be there. So I elected to have an induction, which was horrible. It lasted like from noon on Friday until 3 a.m. Sunday morning, and every intervention possible happened except for a C-section, thankfully. I
mhm.
was able to avoid a C-section, but it was a long, horrible labor. And after that experience, I was like, something's got to give. Like, this can't be what birth is supposed to be.
Mhm.
And I started to research different things. And with my son, my middle child, I still had a hospital birth, but I tried to advocate for myself. But it was during COVID,
Mm,
and I wasn't allowed to have a doula, and only my husband was allowed to be there. I wasn't allowed to have any other guests, and just all the different COVID rules that were happening. And yeah, so I didn't have a strong enough voice to get the birth that I wanted. So I still ended up with an epidural, still ended up on Pitocin, all of those things. But it wasn't as horrible as my first. Anyway, after that, I was like, I'm never stepping foot in a hospital again. Like, I hate
mm,
this. I don't want anything to do with hospitals anymore. And like, I hate everything about it. Like, laboring there, recovering there, like, it's just not for me. And anyway, so I knew that I wanted to have a home birth with my third even before I was pregnant with her. And that's what I did.
Awesome. Was there something that kind of made it an idea in your head? Like, did you see somebody else who had a home birth, or did
I
you kind of go down that route somewhere else?
I didn't know anyone who had had a home birth, and I wasn't really even on like Birthstagram yet.
Mhm.
I honestly don't know where that idea came from. I think it was honestly just during COVID, like hospital situation was horrible. So
Yeah.
I wanted to have a home birth with my second because I'm like, I don't want to have to go to the hospital. So
Hmm.
what are my other options? Home birth.
Yeah.
Um, but we weren't able to make it happen until my third. But there's no specific person
Hmm.
or I don't know. Maybe it was God who
Yeah.
put the idea in my head.
Yeah. That's interesting. And so your third, was there things that you did differently to kind of prepare beforehand, or was it all when you got pregnant that you started going into the home birth planning?
It was probably mostly once I was pregnant. Like I knew I
Mhm.
wanted to have a home birth beforehand, but I didn't, there wasn't a lot of time. I mean, my second, I had like just stopped nursing him around 12 months when I got pregnant with my third. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of time between babies to plan. But I don't know. I knew I wanted to have a home birth, but I didn't. I was already pregnant once I started like, okay, what's that going to look like? What do I need to know? What do I need to do? That kind of thing. And so my best friend was pregnant at the same time as me, actually. She was also planning a home birth and she was due like 3 weeks before me, I think.
Mm.
Anyway, so we lived in the same area and she did a lot of research on midwives and this and that. So I ended up just choosing the same midwife as her because I'm like, I trust your research. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna follow suit and use the same midwife. And so at my first appointment with her, I was just like, I have no idea what to expect. Like I've never gone into labor on my own before. With my second, my water broke at home, but I wasn't contracting until I was at the hospital for a couple of hours. Anyway, so I was just really nervous about expectations with
Mhm.
an unmedicated birth because I hadn't experienced that before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just throughout prenatal care. Oh, so something that's pretty serendipitous, I guess. Before I got pregnant, I just randomly met this woman at the park and we were talking, and she was pregnant. And I was like, I should ask her about her birth plan, but I never did. And we just talked about different things. And then we like exchanged numbers, but we weren't able to meet up again just with conflicting schedules and whatnot. And then I had shared something on Instagram that I was planning a home birth after I was pregnant. And a mutual friend of ours was like, hey, you should reach out to Kirsten. Her name's Kirsten. She's a home birth doula and she just had a home birth and whatever. And I look at her Instagram and I'm like, I know her. I met her at the park a few months ago. And so we ended up meeting up. And it was funny because she said that she wanted to like talk about home birth with me too, but didn't. Like, so we both
Mhm.
had this feeling like we should talk about this, but we didn't.
Yeah.
And that's why. So anyway, I ended up hiring her as my doula, and she was amazing. She just helped me a lot, like prepare mentally for birth and just like talked me through different emotions I was having and stuff like that. I also took Bridget Taylor's course, Built to
Mhm.
Birth, and that helped me a lot too to prepare. Most of my preparation was mental and spiritual. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary, like exercise. I didn't follow like a prenatal exercise program or anything, or like worry too much about that. I probably should have worried more about physical preparation, but it was for me, I really needed to prepare mentally, and that's what I did.
Mhm.
Anyway, so pregnancy goes on, and I was not loving my midwife.
Mm.
And I'm like, I don't know what to do because she was super affordable, which was one of the main reasons why I wanted her to be my
Yeah.
midwife. But she was just very quirky and not in a way that, like, I'm weird too, but not in a way that, like, I felt connected to her.
Mhm.
She just said a lot of like off things that were kind of uncomfortable. And anyway, just little things like that. And she was a little slightly more medical than I would have wanted. Anyway, so as my birth is getting closer, I'm like, gosh, I really don't think I want her at my birth.
Yeah.
I do. And the day that I went into labor, so my due date was August 12th, which was a week after my 30th birthday. And my goal was just my goal, like I have any control over it. But I was like, I just don't want her to ruin my birthday. Like, if I go into birth the very day after my birthday, that's fine. Just don't ruin my birthday. And my whole birthday, I was having like little baby contractions.
Hmm.
And I'm like, stop messing with me. Like, just let me enjoy my birthday. And the very next morning, 4 a.m., I woke up to go to the bathroom and I laid back down. I'm like, she's gonna come today. And I was having contractions, and she did sure enough come that day. But so
Wow.
I started getting everything ready that early just because I was too anxious to fall back asleep. And there were things that we'd planned to do to prepare that day that we didn't have. Like, we didn't have anything to put underneath the birth pool. And like, I don't know, that's just one of several like little things that we didn't have ready. So I'm like waking up my husband to go get a tarp out of the shed so we can get the birth pool ready. And then I started contract timing my contractions at like 5:30 or something. And I sent a timer to my midwife and was like, a baby's coming today. And she was like, great. And then a little while later, she messaged me that she had a first time mom who was also in labor and who was she was birthing at her birth center. So she
Mm.
was like, do you want me to come over and break your water or give you a tincture to speed things up? And I messaged my doula and I was like, no, I don't want this. Like, what do I do? And she's like, tell her to F off. And I was just told her no. I was like, no, I don't want those things and whatever. And I was really upset that she wanted to intervene in that way, because that was why I was having a home birth, was to not have anyone intervene and to just let things happen naturally the way that God had intended them to.
Mhm.
And so after she said that and after I told her no, I just kind of like forgot about her entirely. And my friend who had just had her home birth a few weeks before, she came over. And then my doula, Kirsten, came over. I was just laboring in my living room with my friends and
Mhm.
chatting. And I was in and out of the tub a couple of times, the pool, birth pool, a couple of times. Then I things started to get like more intense to where I couldn't talk during contractions. I remember I was in so 4 a.m. was when things started. Everyone came like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, maybe around like 11. I was in the birth pool and Kirsten had just stepped out to go nurse her baby. And after she left, I like started to have feelings of like, I don't know if I can do this. And like, it was just getting harder to endure the contractions. My legs were hurting a lot. Like, I was leaning on the edge of the pool, like on my knees, and my legs were hurting. So she came back and like gave me a little pep talk. And I don't even remember what she said, but whatever she said helped me to feel better. So she's like, do you want to get out of the pool? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so I kind of like turned, rolled over to get out of the pool. I couldn't move anymore after that contraction came, and it was too intense to do anything else. So I was just stuck, like leaning back on the side of the pool with my legs out in front of me. And then I don't then things just started happening. So then I remember being like, it burns. And she's like, yes, it does. It burns. And she's giving me counter pressure on my knees, which felt so good. And my friend Taylor called my husband and my kids in. So they came in. I think I pushed like twice and her head came out. And then there was a pause between her head, and I'm just breathing, waiting for the next contraction. And then I pushed again and her body came out. I pulled her out of the water, and just like the best feeling in the world of like, I can't believe I just did that.
Mhm.
And it just is so, I mean, anyone who's home birth knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's just the most incredible feeling, like immediately after your baby is born into your arms, and so, so cool. Anyway, and then my midwife did end up showing up like a couple hours after, oh, because Taylor was like, oh, I told Rebecca that your baby came. And I was like, oh, I completely forgot about Rebecca entirely. And the mom who was birthing at her birth center ended up giving birth within like 10 minutes of me. And so I don't know. I think that is exactly how things were supposed to happen. Like I
Mhm.
didn't want her there and she wasn't there and God was like, here's a way for that to happen. And
Yeah.
it happened that way. And I had all the support I needed. My husband, my best friend, and my doula Kirsten, who's
Mhm.
now a midwife. But yeah, it was really incredible.
That's
And I
awesome.
remember like maybe like an hour after, I already was like, I want to do that again. Like I want to
Uh-huh.
have another home birth because I loved it so much.
Was there anyone who during the birth was asking you like, "Oh, do you want us to contact your midwife now?" Or did they all kind of know?
No,
Okay.
I guess Taylor had been messaging her updates, which is
Mhm.
fine with me. I'm fine that she was messaging her, but I didn't, she didn't even cross my mind. Nobody asked me about her or anything.
Mhm.
They just let me birth and
Yeah.
I did.
Wow. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
then she came over like postpartum to
Yeah,
check on the
just to
baby, check
check
on
like
you and everything.
bleeding and to make sure all of my placenta came out and whatever else she did.
Mhm.
So weighing the baby, cut the cord. I cut the cord, but not until after she was there
Mhm.
and whatever else. Yeah.
And so you birthed the placenta before she came?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had already been out of the yeah, the placenta maybe came within like a half an hour after, but it was really weird. It like came out in chunks, like it didn't come out
Mm,
whole, which kind of freaked Kirsten out a little bit because she hadn't seen that before. But we just got me out of the pool, handed baby to my husband, placenta in a bowl, and I got in the shower just to rinse off and then into my bed. And I never felt like woozy or anything, like I had hemorrhaged or anything like that.
mhm.
Um, it just didn't come out in one pretty piece, which I'm kind of bummed about. I wanted like that pretty placenta picture,
Yeah.
and I didn't get that, but that's okay.
Mm, mhm. Was there any worry about having, like, placenta left over? Did she have to check you
No,
for that? No?
she did check, but no, I wasn't worried about that, and it didn't
Mhm.
appear to be an issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so just the postpartum period, how did that go for you guys? Like, the initial postpartum breastfeeding, all of that?
Breastfeeding was hard. Breastfeeding
Mm,
has always been hard for me. But so she had a lip tie, a tongue tie, and two buckle ties. And
mm,
so that just made it hurt a lot. And my nipples were pretty sore for a couple of weeks before we could get to a lactation consultant. And she did have a frenectomy and she did some CFT, craniofacial therapy, which
mhm,
helped a lot. So things got better. But for the first couple weeks, it was pretty hard just because it was so painful.
mhm. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, your, like, whole birth story of how it kind of just worked out the way that it was supposed to work out, so
Yeah,
that's really cool. And do you think if you were planning on having any more kids, or if you did have any more kids, you would want to plan like a free birth, or do you think you would still hire a midwife?
I do think I would plan a free birth.
A
If I
free
were
birth.
to hire a midwife, it would be Kirsten, who was my doula, and she's a traditional midwife, unlicensed midwife. I just have to fly her here, and the chances of her making it for the birth are slim because I tried that. For my friend Taylor, who was at my birth, had another baby last month,
Mm,
and she planned a free birth, but I was going to be there. She did not come while I was there, and so I
yeah.
came home and she was born a week later. So
Mm,
it's hard to plan things like that. But yeah, I think
yeah.
that I would free birth if I were to meet a midwife in my area that I like really connected with and felt like she was somebody that I would want there.
Mhm.
Then maybe, but I don't know. I haven't found that. I think I
Yeah,
would birth.
definitely. Was that something that ever kind of crossed your mind when you were thinking about having a home birth? Like, was free birth something
I
you kind of
honestly
thought
don't
about?
think I knew that it was an option.
Okay.
I thought that you had to have a midwife,
Mhm.
but now I know it's not the case.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do think that way, that they think, like, you have to have somebody there,
Yeah.
and when you don't, it's, like, always by accident, like, people don't
Yeah.
know that it can happen intentionally, like, that's
Yeah.
what someone had planned to do, and so, yeah, it's really just cool to hear, like, the transformation that happens into wanting a free birth or even like just accidentally having one, and then your experience from there and what it changed from then on. Like now
Mhm.
you look at it differently. So that's really cool.
Yep. Yeah, I'm really grateful for all of my birth experiences. Like, yes, of course, I wish that the first two would have gone differently,
Hmm.
but I'm grateful for what I learned from those experiences because they've changed my view about birth. And I mean, they gave me my beautiful home birth and hopefully in the future more home births.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you feel like you want to touch on, or like a last comment that you want to leave everyone with?
I don't know. I just feel like home birth is something that I think that well, I won't say any, but honestly, any woman could do and feel empowered by. And I wish more women believed it was an option for them. Because I think most women are like, oh, I could never do that because X, Y, and Z. It's usually pain related. But I just wish that they knew that they could because it's so transformative and like it's just so much better. And women
Hmm.
deserve that. They deserve the best, and their babies deserve the best. And I truly believe that that's home birth for the majority of cases. There are obvious emergencies that require medical intervention, but I don't think we need to talk about exceptions all the time. I think that
Hmm.
the most women would be able to have a home birth and love it and
Hmm.
wish that all of their births had been that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my last 2 cents, I guess.
No, that's great. I love it. Really quickly, you did touch on something that I kind of wanted to backtrack on. You had said how you wish women wouldn't fear like the pain and all of that. And at the very beginning, you had said that you felt that way. Like that's how you were brought up, thinking that birth was just painful and like
Mhm.
scary. So, how do you think you view birth now differently than that?
I believe that it's pain with a purpose.
Mm.
So, and I don't think that there's any other experience that we experience as humans where it's so purposeful as giving birth. And I don't think that and I also think that pain is like just a mindset.
Mhm.
Like, I wouldn't describe my birth as painful. It was intense and it was
Mhm.
hard, but I don't know that I would describe it as painful, except maybe
Yeah.
like the fire that burned, but I don't know. I think it's just the way that we talk about it, which
Mhm.
I mean you see it changing on social media, like women talk more positively about their births nowadays, but as like society as a whole, it's still
Mhm.
viewed as something painful and women shouldn't have to experience that pain. Like these medical interventions are there so that you don't have to suffer. That's the other thing. I don't think that it's a suffering. I don't think that we're
Mhm.
suffering in birth. I think it's pain with a purpose and we're gaining a baby from it. And we are being transformed into women of God who rely on Him for everything. And what
Mhm.
better opportunity than being a co creator with Him and bringing life into the world?
Yeah, that was beautiful. I love that. Well, thank
Thanks.
you so much for sharing that
Yeah.
and your birth story. I really appreciated you sharing everything. And then if anyone does want to connect with you, where can they find you?
So my Instagram account is at Three Lights Birth, ThreeLights Birth.
Okay.
And I'm
And
a doula in Central Texas, also birth keeper. I'm attending a free birth in next month. And that's where my passion lies. But I do attend
mhm.
hospital births and midwife attended home births as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. It's hard to find like reliable birth keepers. Like you're always not sure about them. So
Yeah,
it's good to know that there's a birth keeper in your area.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll go ahead and leave your links down below for anyone who wants to go ahead and find you. And that way they could just find you really easily.
Thanks.
Wow, what a great birth story Shandy told us today. Her experiences with her births were all so different, but so very special in how they transformed her, not only as a mom, but also her now becoming a doula and birth keeper. I just think it's very special when a woman's birth experience will kind of light the fire for the passion of birth work. And sometimes that's really how women will find their calling is they kind of have to go through the experience and then realize that's what they were meant to do and that's what they are called to do. It is really important to know that you do have so many options for your birth. So, if you're listening to this and you really don't know what your birth choices are, you are just going with the hospital because that is the mainstream thing to do and what everyone else around you is doing. I just want you to know that there are so many different options for you. You do not only have the choice of having a hospital birth, you also have birth centers possibly around you. You can do a home birth with so many different types of midwives. There's not just one type of midwife, so make sure you know all of the different types. And then you also can have a free birth. That is a valid option and it is something that you can do. So just make sure you're researching all of your options and you know exactly what kind of birth you want, and then see which one of those options would best fit how you want your birth experience to go. If you are currently planning and preparing for a home birth, then I'd love to share with you more information about the Empowered Home Birth course. This is a home birth based birth course, and inside this 8-week program, you will receive educational videos and weekly emails filled with additional resources for you to prepare for your empowering home birth. Once you purchase the course, you also get perks such as access to my entire resource library and private community chats. To enroll, click the link in the show notes and get started on the journey to your empowered home birth. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share with any family or friends who may benefit from these empowering stories. Also, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review to help others who are searching for this information find this podcast. I'll see you next week for another empowering home birth story.